raped by my best friend's fiancé, betrayed, abandoned, and forced to face him in court. I can almost picture Julia's home. A haven filled with cinnamon, warm aromas wafting through, still resonating with the echoes of children's laughter. Her mother's soft voice was always there in the air, cushioning and reassuring. The light tinkle of dishes acted almost as an announcement of another meal shared in comfort. Growing up with Julia was, in a sense, like living in a fairy tale where every little part of that town harbored adventure and sweet innocence when it came to our friendships. Julia and I did everything together. Through the years, our friendship grew with secret moments, whispers late at night, and big dreams for the future. Her family just welcomed me with open arms, like I was one of them. Her dad's loud laughs, her mom's caring vibes, and Logan, her older brother, always having her back. I just spent so many afternoons at their place. The living room was always filled with love and laughter. Man, those were the really cool days when everything seemed just right in my life before the dark times began setting in. As time went on, we started realizing that things in our lives were changing little by little. When Julia became the life of the party, it was infectious. She made friends and totally fit in with her bubbly personality and infectious laugh. I mostly felt like the quiet observer. Even when she was in the middle of her crazy life, she was one of those girls that everybody wanted to hang out with, but I'd more likely end up lost in a book, diving into some place in time way far from here. And then comes Billy, crashing into our lives, just as wild and sudden as a summer storm. He was just a charmer, you know? The kind of guy that just attracts everybody. There was something about him that just pulled you in. This magnetic vibe that had you hooked, like a firework, bright and blazing with excitement. He was everything that I wasn't. Super bold, really confident, the life of every party. And I was just this shy girl who would kind of fade into the background. So finally, Billy started paying attention to me, and quite honestly, I was really flattered and kind of shocked. Julia had been head over heels for Billy, and she would always share these cute stories about their romantic times together. She would talk of how she saw herself in a wedding dress beside him, spilling all the juicy details of their first kiss in those special moments. She'd go on and on about how cute and hot she thought Billy was and how much she totally adored him. She always said that even after getting hitched, she wanted me to be there with her like a sister so that we could stick together like one big happy family with both her and Billy. We hit it off right away. And Julia totally fell for Billy, just swept up in the thrill of being picked. She was so convinced he was the one. And honestly, I kinda did for a bit. The thing was, he made her feel special as if she were the only girl in the world and no one else even counted. Really, he was just a self-absorbed jerk who only cared about fooling around with girls. I totally didn't catch those little fissures in his charming exterior. The warning signs that were so easy to ignore. Billy was always so easy going around me. He'd hug me and say, "I love you like my sister, and you're the best friend of my love, Julia." But for real, I always felt kinda insecure and weird with his hugs, like he was just pressing in too much. There were a few times I caught him on purpose touching my butt or hugging me from behind at parties. It felt like just another ordinary night until it totally flipped. Julia had everyone over and we were hanging out in her living room, sprawled on the floor with those cozy string lights all around us, imbuing the place with a nice, warm vibe. We were cracking up, sharing stories, just sucking in all the good times together. I can still remember how safe I felt, wrapped in all that love and laughter. But as the night went on, I started feeling kinda off. My heart was racing, and that tightness in my chest came back. The one I'd had for years, reminding me of my heart condition. Those upcoming exams were stressing me out big time. I thought my meds would chill me out when I took them. Little did I realize it would take me down a pretty dark road. Billy totally noticed I was off and offered to take me to Julia's spare room. His smooth, comforting voice led me down the dimly lit hall. I remember thinking I felt safe with him, as if I just needed a little time to gather my thoughts. But the moment I walked into that room, everything flipped. I'm not really sure when the darkness started closing in on me. I can still feel being so trapped in my own body, fighting and screaming. My head was all foggy from that haze, and I could hardly think straight. His hands were all over me, rough and demanding, like my trying to resist didn't matter at all. I felt like yelling and pushing him away, but it was as if I was out of my body, just looking from afar as everything went down, unable to say anything because I was so scared and confused. Anyway, when I finally came to, I was all alone, feeling utterly crushed under this enormous weight of shame and horror. I am totally spaced out. My body is beaten up, and that night keeps running in my head like some creepy shadow. He totally raped me, and I was hoping like crazy I wasn't having his kid. And Billy's in the other room acting like nothing's wrong. Man, what he did really hit me hard, but I just couldn't find the right words to describe how I felt. So I had to be tough, brush it off, and just act like everything was cool. The subsequent days are all jumbled up in my mind. I did my best to avoid Billy, but he just wouldn't stop pursuing me, and that really scared the hell out of me. I spilled some of it to Julia, but truthfully, the truth was coming out bit by bit, highly confusing. And she was getting annoyed. I just couldn't lay it all out for her because I was worried about how she might take it and what that might do to our friendship. I just told him that I needed some space and couldn't hang out with someone like Billy anymore. Julia's face screwed up, all worried and not buying it. Is this about Billy? He's a really awesome guy, Grace. Maybe you're just overreacting a bit. I felt a sudden wave of guilt hit me with what she said. How can I explain this heavy feeling in my chest? Like his touch was both familiar and foreign. She wouldn't really understand, and I didn't want to ruin her happiness. So, months went by, and I shoved that memory way back in my mind. School really took over, keeping me away from the darkness as much as I could. Then college started, and everything changed. I made a bunch of new friends and threw myself into my classes, trying to move on. But every now and then, those memories of that night would creep back in, and all the laughter got swapped out for this heavy silence. Every time I saw a picture of Julia and Billy together, the doorknob creaked in my hand, and it stung like hell. They were smiling, clearly in love, while I was a ghost floating around both of their lives. Wanting to be okay for Julia was one thing. Feeling betrayed was a pain that wouldn't go away. I felt like a ghost, just hanging around in the background, stuck with my past like it was some heavy chain holding me down. I didn't feel it until the announcement was up about Julia getting engaged, and then it hit me hard. My heart just dropped. The words felt like a mean prank. Forever begins with you. There they were, looking so happy in that picture. The wave of nausea hit me like an old buddy. It was a reminder that I'd never shake off the shadows of my past, that they'd always stick around with me. Man, those days felt like torture. I must have replayed that night in my head 100 million times, reliving the guilt and shame that clung to me. I just couldn't breathe. It was all too silent. Then, at the very bottom of my despair, this thought hit me. I gotta call Logan. He's the only one who'd understand. Anyway, we met up at that little cafe that held a lot of memories. I was sitting across from him, both freaked out and, relieved. Logan, I gotta tell you something, I said, my voice all wobbly. He was looking at me, all concerned, his eyes digging into mine. "What's going on, Grace?" I took a deep breath and started to tell him my truth bit by bit, as words just spilled out like a dam breaking. I told him how, that night, I felt trapped and helpless in how Billy had taken something from me that I'd never be able to get back. Logan's face twisted with every word, going from confused and angry to this protective instinct rising up in him. "Why didn't you say anything to Julia?" he asked, his tone awfully stern. "I was scared," I admitted. "I figured she'd never believe me. I didn't want to mess up her happiness. I thought if I just kept quiet, it would all go away." He leaned across the table and took my hands in his. "Hey, Grace, you really need to spill the beans to her. She totally deserves to know, and you deserve to be listened to. I'll take care of him and make sure he gets what's coming to him. I'll make him regret what he did and help him realize how serious his behavior is. We should report him and make sure that he gets what is coming for him. I.e., justice." But as much as I wanted to believe him, I was tormented by fear. What if she really did turn on me? What if I finally lost her? I felt like standing on the edge of the cliff, the earth crumbling from under me. At that moment, losing Julia and facing the wrath of someone I once trusted felt unbearable. Over the weeks, I felt this crazy pressure building up inside me, like it was going to squash me. I retreated to painting. My canvas was my sanctuary where I could douse my emotions with colors. Every stroke on that canvas was a stroke of liberation, the prerequisite expression to come out and face the darkness with no words to say. I made some pieces that show the chaos inside me, with bold red strokes for anger and soft blue shades for sorrow. Logan was always there for me, having my back while I dealt with the chaos inside. He kept pushing me to do what needed to be done so that I could get my voice back in this mess. Problem was, the thought of facing Julia just flat outscared the crap out of me. I kept convincing myself that maybe it was best to just let it go. Then there was the message from Julia. "Can we talk?" My heart hammering, I read her words and mixed hope with trepidation. I wanted to run, to hide from the confrontation that would surely come. But I also craved resolution. Just an opportunity to salvage our friendship. The pull of shared history, what had once been so strong between us, was impossible to ignore. We met at the same cafe I had spoken to Logan. Indeed, she did look different, for in her eyes, a depth of sorrow and heaviness had settled, not unlike mine. Such thick air between us, heavy with unspoken words, memories of laughter replaced by a heavy weight hanging. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Julia said, her voice cracking slightly. "I never really realized how far apart we've grown. I miss you, Grace. I want to try and make this right." I was literally welling up. Brimming over. "I miss you too, but we really need to discuss some things." My heart was racing, and that too. Known tenseness in my chest was returning. "Things I should have told you ages ago." She looked concerned, her brow all furrowed. And just like that, the dam broke. I let it all out, the words tumbling out fast, every single one feeling heavier than the last. I opened up about Billy, the darkness that had been hanging over my heart for ages. Julia's face went white as my confession hit us both. "I really thought I could keep you safe," I said, getting all choked up. "I didn't want to mess up your happiness, but I just can't take it anymore." The silence wrapped itself around us, and my big reveal just hung there. Heavy in the air, Julia's face went through the emotions. First shock, then denial, as her eyes searched mine for the truth. "Grace, I had no clue. Why didn't you just tell me?" "I was really scared," I said, my heart hammering. "I thought you wouldn't believe me and would turn on me. I felt super lonely. She softened a little, and I caught the first glimpse of hurt in her eyes. You should have come to me. I totally would have believed you, no matter what. I would have had your back. I really didn't want to lose you, I said quietly as tears finally fell. But honestly, I've been losing you a little more every day since that night. I didn't want to say goodbye to our friendship, but I just can't keep acting like everything's fine. Julia reached across the table and took hold of my hands. You are not losing me, Grace. I am very sorry for what you have gone through. I wish I had known. We could have faced it together. Julia picked up her phone and dialed Billy's number. She was like, "What kind of monster are you that I never saw before? You raped my best friend, who's practically my sister, and then you had the audacity to ask me to marry you. This relationship is done, and now you're going to have to face the law. We're filing a complaint against you today, and trust me, we'll make sure that you go to prison where you belong, rotting there for the rest of your life." Things changed between us at that very moment. The heavy shadows started to subside, and understanding and light stepped in. I could see it in her eyes, the full reality of her love, a love that had always been there waiting for me to grab hold. And from that day, our healing began. Julia became that person whom I would go to and pour out my heart and share those feelings I have kept inside for ages. We embarked on hard work while rebuilding our friendship by taking the fragile path to restore the trust we had lost. Logan was always there with us, helping us to heal. He would tell me, "Stop dodging the feelings you have been holding on to for way too long and face the pain. Use it to take a step toward healing." As we chatted and opened up, the darkness faded away and was replaced by that little spark of hope and healing. Julia really had my back with a painting, always pushing me to let loose and pour my feelings onto the canvas. We would spend afternoons at this awesome local art studio that was flooded with colors and full of texture. It was something you could easily get lost in. Every brushstroke felt like this big emotional release, a chance to face my past while making something pretty cool. As the days turned into weeks, I started to feel a shift inside me. That darkness I was carrying began to fade, and suddenly, hope and healing were stepping in. I realized that the shadows from my past have always been a part of me, but they don't get to define who I am anymore. I'm more than a victim. I'm a survivor, totally ready to embrace life with open arms. Anyway, we were all caught up in that lawsuit and trying to get Billy sent to prison when I found out I was pregnant by him. This totally made it easier to prove his guilt, and he ended up getting a longer sentence. The court also let me go ahead with an abortion, so I ended the pregnancy. So there I was on this great spring afternoon standing before my easel, painting the bright colors of a sunset, and I just couldn't stop smiling. The colors blended together. Each stroke told my journey through healing pain and the love of true friendship. In those moments, I felt this peace just wash over me. Nothing that was thrown my way could be too much for me to handle because I knew I had the strength to tackle any challenge. The shadows were still there, but they didn't have a hold on me anymore. I was finally free. So I started sharing my art with others, and it really helped my experiences connect with those who went through tough times. My paintings became a way to connect, like a bridge spanning between pain and healing. I did local art shows where I could share my story through my art and engage others in that same conversation about bouncing back and finding hope. I was brought to a place, standing in front of my painting, surrounded by friends uplifting me, where it wasn't that the darkness that I had conquered found my voice and reclaimed my story, but I have learned that real strength doesn't live in silence. It lives in the courage to share our stories and connect with others through their pains and triumphs. With Julia and Logan hanging out with me, I felt like I could take on whatever life threw my way. The things from my past that I had been embarrassed about didn't seem so embarrassing anymore. Just proof that I made it through. Together, We've forged a new path filled with laughter, creativity, and unbreakable friendships.